just do it. Jump into the unknown, face the fear, and have fun.
People think they can only teach if they are the best of the best, but it's not true. You can give so much value with any level. Depending on the target audience, we understand much more what to do next.
The feeling you get when you look back and it's embarrassing, that's the feeling of success, because something changed for the better and you can be proud of yourself. I heard it once, the most expensive place on earth is the cemeteries, because there lies all the dreams of the people.
Yes. What I do with our podcast is giving free consultancy that would cost actually a lot of money.
You inspired me. Yeah, that's so true.
Hi, welcome to another podcast episode. Today we do a marketing consultation with Caroline. You have a podcast yourself and you have over 300 episodes. That's incredible. Could you tell me a little bit about that? How did you decide to start it and how did it go?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. This is my favorite question. At the age of 15, I decided, when I grew up, I want to have or run my own radio show. It was the dream. And then in 2007, the first podcast appeared. And I have to mention, and I did not start because I was too shy. I was labeled an introvert and I was not speaking at all, not in school. I don't know how I graduated without speaking. Last year, in December, I was on a road trip in San Diego. At 3 a.m., one word came to me and it was podcast.
Wow.
And I acted on it immediately. So I set everything up. Within 1 hour, it was all done. The first episode was recorded. The first interviews were scheduled. And then the rest is history. Of course, there was a way between doing this, starting this, concerning my development as a speaker. But the message to the audience is just do it. Jump into the unknown, face the fear, and have fun.
Yes, that's inspiring. As an introvert, to start without any procrastination. I know it from my start. We hired someone who would give us advice, but I told him, give us advice like the most important things, because we know we will do it not very good in the first episodes. We don't care about the lighting, the perfect setting. We started pretty fast. And now, of course, if I look back, I think, oh my God, how bad was I? I couldn't say a proper sentence back then. And every 5 episodes, I feel like I'm reaching a new level of improvement.
Absolutely. I also witness this in the quality of my guests. So I am challenged, of course, and then I have guests that are very polite and nice, and then you have the challenging ones, and of course also the quality of the questions. It changed.
That's true. That's the only way how you can improve. In theory, you can learn so much. Watch all the information that is available online about podcasting. But still, it's like doing theory in driving school and never drive and then try to pass the exam. You will be overwhelmed with everything.
Oh, I remember my first driving lesson. My only thought was, I'm driving. I was so excited.
Yes, everything is much more complicated. With podcasts, it's the same. When you have this routine, then the questions, they come out more automatically. I realized, especially with video, sometimes I was thinking, looking up and thinking and speaking. And then I realized, okay, I have to stop that. And then I was saying, and then I had to stop that. So every episode I learned something and I tried to change it in the next episode.
Oh, yes. I like this learning aspect.
What would you like to achieve in this call? And what is your project and goal I can help you with?
My purpose is to learn more about how to market. First of all, my podcast, how to monetize, maybe how to promote and become more visible. And also I told you about this new technology, this platform I use the last 12 months, also for recording the podcast, and how I can combine the two, technology, inspiration, and leave my guests with the portion of increase.
And with the platform, you mean this Be Connected platform?
Yes, it's called Be Connected. It's not only a video conferencing system where I record or I have my interview guests there. It's also group creation. We can have live events. We can do the podcast recording with an audience. We can invite people and watch the replays. I changed the process also every, let's say, season, because my podcast has seasons. Every 44 episodes ends one season. And then I think, what can I do? What can I improve? Which target group do I talk to? Entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, NGOs, for example. This is amazing. So this is my question. My intention is to learn as much as I can from you, and not only learn, because you mentioned it, application is the key. I have to implement what I learn today.
That sounds like an interesting challenge. Let's start from the beginning. What is your goal? Why do you do the podcast? Is there some goal behind it, or is it just you want to speak on the podcast?
Yes, maybe this was the goal in the beginning, to overcome my fears and just do it and prove to other people that it's possible. Because if it's possible for me, if I can do it, you can do it too. So to be an example for introverts and say, look, you can have your own podcast. And I inspired many people already. So my goal is, and the second thing is, I asked myself this question last year: what inspires me? There was a time in my life I was not inspired by anything. So, and this is the first question I ask my guests: what inspires you? So I learned from my guests, and through the podcast, I'm very inspired. And also I learned from the guests. What is my goal? Of course, transport my message, to market the guests, to promote their products, because if you help one person to achieve their goals, then you will reach your goals as well. Or if you help someone climb the mountain, you are on that mountain too.
Yes, that's so true. You don't need to be much further advanced than the people you are helping, because if you climbed a little bit more on the mountain, you can tell them the way. Yeah, I've heard it on YouTube as well. Like, people think they can only teach if they are the best of the best, the experts, but it's not true. You can give so much value with any level.
Yes, absolutely. So I learned it from Bob Proctor. I'm a consultant for Bob Proctor's Thinking into Results. I advertise, or I offer my programs also at Be Connected. The platform is new. The app was published 1 month ago in a new version. Let's say there was this app, but it was not finished, and now it's better. You just need your phone to dial into that video conference or into my podcast interview. And I want to combine everything. So the question to you is, how do I determine my target group, or how do I sharpen my offers, and how do I go out there, show up and brand myself?
Yes, that's a good question with target audience. It's usually the thing we have to think about before thinking about marketing channels, because that, depending on the target audience, we understand much more what to do next. Do you have episodes that are exceptionally successful, and maybe there is also some learnings, so we can maybe learn from episodes that are like have more views and downloads than others, but also maybe you realized which kind of topics you are more passionate about, which kind of guests you have more fun, and we can start from there.
Of course, there are episodes that I prefer as well, when there are outstanding people with exceptional results. For example, my billionaire friend, episode 77, and I met him in person last year in Los Angeles. Unfortunately, he passed away in April, and I'm so grateful that I had the chance to do this interview. Then we had the king of sales, Jeffrey Gittimer, in episode 111. And Brian Proctor, the son of Bob Proctor, I mentioned episode 96. And there were other 2 or 3 episodes voted into the, you call it staff choice, something, selection of the staff on the World Podcast Network. I think for me, It's not about the topics, because the topic is always the same. It's inspiration, it's a journey, stories of change and success. For me, the people are in the main focus. And I also love biographies. What did they do? Where did they come from? And to become that person they are now. So the transition, something like that.
I think we are coming closer. We are starting very general and cannot target everyone. We have to figure out how we can specify the target audience. It doesn't mean we will exclude others. They can listen, but when doing the content, when doing the promotion, we will always have a certain, like several types of people. And maybe we can learn from your social media. So you are communicating, maybe they are commenting. Did you see which kind of people are interacting with you?
Yes, I see clearly CEOs or owners of companies, because this is what I am also. I created my first company 16 years ago, and I had employees as well. And I closed it last year because I wanted to travel. My background is, maybe you come from a very stressful environment and you want to slow down. And then you take 15 to 20 minutes, listen to a podcast episode of mine, and you get inspired by the people that made a change in their life. So a target group, I see CEOs, or entrepreneurs, freelancer, whatever, like leaders, you can call them as well. And the other question was about the listeners. These are two pair of shoes, I think. One, the guests as well. These can be potential clients. And the listeners are, yesterday I heard something very inspiring. It was the people I talked to and I produced a podcast for are ready. And they are waiting. So they are waiting for a call. I mentioned it before. How about starting your own podcast? Or the first step can also be to be a guest in my podcast. And they never did this before. So I'm very honored to be their first choice to be a guest and to have a speaking experience. This is the space I create, the safe space, I think, because as I mentioned, I find every one of my guests very inspiring, because it is created during the conversation. You know the mastermind principle, right? When two minds come together, they do mastermind. And so something new is coming from that. And I feel it during my interviews. It's very inspiring.
Interesting. So for me, it seems like, okay, we have two target audience, but the guests is probably not the main focus today, because you figured it out yourself, kind of. You have enough guests to fill over 300 episodes. The focus is now more on listeners.
Yes, absolutely.
And the listeners, they are ambitious, maybe? Could we say they are ambitious, or they want to succeed in their life?
No, I see it like they want to change something in their lives, because this is me. I attract people who are like me. And I am just, and you mentioned it, one step further. So I did this already. I crossed that line. I could not tell you who these people are, because they are not showing up. They are invisible, because they are not talking like, yeah, I listened to your episode, I'm so inspired, etc. These are few. The few I talk to, I always encourage to join me for an episode too. It is the fear, oh, we are recording and it will be published. It's a conversation between friends. You can always choose whether it is published or not. I had episodes I did 3 times because the person was not satisfied with the outcome.
So your goal is to bring listeners also to take part of a podcast.
Yes, because I thought about services I can offer, how to set up your own podcast. I did this in January. There was not so much resonance. I had 2 or 3 clients from that, and then I gave up, which is not so good, I know. And the second thing, to charge. Yes, this is my newest, to charge for this experience, because it is an experience. We have to differentiate between people. I think there are 3 kind of people: the experienced, and then the ones who want to add value, and then the people who want to only talk about themselves, promote their products. And then the 4th category would be the people for whom that is really a growth I compared it with when you are afraid of climbing in an airplane. And there are coaches out there, they are doing this with you, and then they coach you and the fear is gone and you face the fear, you go through the fear with them. And I would compare this to a podcast speaking experience. So I could do a package. I could offer this.
Yes, that's a really good idea. It feels for me like you can buy some presents with vouchers for extreme adventure, like driving in a sports car or jumping from an airplane.
Jochen Schweizer. And
yes, exactly, this one.
I was in a Ferrari in Hollywood, but not because I was afraid of. I had an intuition to do this. So I'm a person always jumping into the unknown, doing this, and skydiving is definitely on my bucket list.
Yeah, and podcast can be a similar adventure, similar extreme situation for many people who are not that extrovert or not that experienced with public speaking.
Yes. This is what I realized for myself as well. And I remember the first guests I had, I was so nervous to say the right things. You lose the fear the more often you do it.
I had this journey with my life as well. I started improv theater 3 years ago, and I was the half of the day before going to just for fun, doing improv for fun, I felt sick because I was so nervous. And now yesterday I was performing in front of like 20, 30 people. We do a regular show. When you do it one step at a time. Mm-hmm. Like you increase the range of your comfort zone, one teeny tiny step. But when you look back 2 years ago, you think, oh, wow, I didn't know it's even possible. So the podcast for your audience could be exactly this first step into the unknown, into the outside of comfort zone. And from there, they would say, okay, maybe I can start my own podcast. I can start my own YouTube channel. I can do some videos on social media.
Yes, exactly. They can test it. Yeah, I always tell my guests, it is not important what question I ask, just talk. The questions are like icebreakers and the audience will not notice that. And there's nothing wrong with it. So some of the guests are asking for the questions in advance, but I never give them because I want them to speak from their heart. And also when I met the people, I met them for the first time. So we never spoke before. I do not, some of the podcasters are doing one session to get to know each other and then record. And every time I witness this, then I'm disappointed at all. So I had this slogan, if it's not recorded, it's not worth having this conversation.
One small question. How long did it take you to get used to listening to your own voice?
This is a good question. Sometimes I don't like my voice. But what I do, I like listening to my recordings and also to see the growth when you look back 2 or 3 years. And this is exactly what we need. We need this. In German, you say A-B comparison or something. You compare.
A-B test.
Yeah, A-B. You look back, you see how it was before. Imagine there would be no change. What do you compare it to? When you don't grow, you have to grow. Yes. And of course, you look back and the feeling you get when you look back and it's embarrassing. That's the feeling of success because something changed for the better and you can be proud of yourself for doing the work.
Absolutely. Even starting doing the work, people are focused too much on success. And on social media, it looks so easy because you look at others and they only talk about how successful they are. But you have to be proud on yourself when you just did the first podcast episode or the first step in the right direction. That's the most maybe difficult step because 90-something% of people who plan to start don't do it.
That's true. It's the start that stops most people. And I have
Yeah.
to add something to what you said. You said most people focus too much on success. I would say they focus too much on the wrong definition of success, because I learned that definition is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And that means when you take one step every day, and you mentioned it, tiny steps, you have success, because you don't compare to other people. You only compare to your yesterday's self.
I see a tendency of how you could position yourself and which kind of target audience you could choose. It's all about going outside the comfort zone and especially growth. And you could also create relevant podcast episodes about, I'm introvert, like interviewing introverts who succeeded in the opposite, like in where they have to speak. I just published one episode about an introvert who has 800 videos on YouTube. It's a Filipino businesswoman, top 100 most influential Filipino woman. And she created her own company with VAs and YouTube channel. And she speaks on conferences. And she says, for her, it was horrible in the beginning, but she still she did it. And nowadays she still after something like a podcast episode, she still needs to recharge. For 24 hours, she wants to be alone. She reads a book in her space. Even her fiance leaves her alone for some time because he knows there was a lot of things going on outside of her comfort zone. She needs to recharge. And those kind of guests can be, so the first goal is inspiring, because I think also for me, when I saw very confident people, those gurus who speak in front of thousands of people, I thought, okay, they are just different. They are a different type. They were born like that. I cannot resonate to them. But if I see someone who started with very humble beginning and is not made like for public speaking and still pushing through and succeeding, that's so inspiring. It gives me so much like confidence to start to do it myself.
So true. We learned from Malcolm Gladwell. It takes 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert in the field of your choice. Yeah, let's continue to practice whatever we want to achieve, because it looks so easy when we watch the other people, but they just put in more work, more hours.
Yeah, whenever you watch the first videos or the first pieces of content from successful people like Mr. Beast, you think, wow, that was horrible. That is even worse than my try in the room. So with bad camera and everything is bad. But now, 10 years later, he has a couple 100 million followers. So there is no shortcut. You start perfectly and you succeed.
Perfect. I have to write this down. You inspired me. Yeah, that's so true. So thank you so much for your advices.
You can have a really good feeling about your podcast, about the work you do with this direction, because our society can profit from so much hidden potential out there. People are scared to do that, but you can bring them into the right direction.
Yes, so true. I heard it once. The most expensive place on earth is the cemeteries, because there lies all the dreams of the people.
Yes.
They were not realized. Yeah.
Yes. People don't regret when we are in this situation. It feels like a huge risk sometimes, like to start a business, to start a podcast. But if you look from the overall life perspective, when you are on the deathbed or when you are old, people regret things they haven't tried.
Yes.
They're thinking, what could have happened if I did?
Absolutely. Yes. I remember this. You always have to do it, what you have in mind when you got the impulse. This is my message to the audience. It feels scary, but you will always have what you always had when you do the same things. Albert Einstein stated this. We cannot use the same thinking to solve the problems like the thinking we created them. We have to do or think differently. This is what we do. We create our podcasts.
That's really amazing for your target audience, because they're in this hamster wheel, probably. Oftentimes they say, I have the best ideas, I could do it, but I'm scared. I have so much work and my safe job, I don't want to risk it. I have to focus on that. And by listening to you, that could be the exact thing they need to bring themselves to the next step, to the action step.
Yes, absolutely. I also had guests saying no. I always refer, there was only one person saying no. Yes, it's true. I could tell you in advance when I reached out to her, but other people are telling me, oh, I have no time. I will get back to you later. Then I think, oh, it's a pity because it would serve them. There were great companies, or let's say big companies with the big goal, and they were in trouble. They looked for investors, for example. And I thought the podcast could transport their message. They were so busy, they overlooked opportunities. I asked, would you love to be my podcast guest? This is the question I always ask to unknown people. And then I sent my Calendly link and they book, I told you before, and they book in my Calendly, which is fine because you can automate it. And then you show up for the podcast episode. So my message also to see the opportunity, not, you mentioned the hamster wheel, and we are focused on what we always did. We think this is the way, but in fact, life gives us every day, every second, some impulses. And the question is, are we willing to follow those impulses into the unknown? I did, and I can tell you my results are so better. I'm so much happier than I was last year.
Yeah, sometimes those people find excuses for themselves. They say, I don't have time. I don't have this. I don't have the skills. But in reality, underneath those excuses are fears of being exposed, of freeze, of being viewed as not capable. But the best way to deal with those fears is to go outside the comfort zone and do the thing. So I'm looking at your social media. No, I'm not I'm not going to criticize it. That's also another thing. It's all about whatever we do is our best so far. With all our knowledge, with all our resources, I used to think it's like, oh, maybe I made a mistake, or maybe I'm doing it wrong now, but that's the best we have. So there is no critique. So you already positioned your podcast as like inspiration, inspired podcast. That's already pretty cool. So Facebook seems to be your main channel. Is it right? With 4,400 followers?
No, it's TikTok with 19,500 followers.
Oh, wow.
I stopped TikTok right now. I was live every day in the morning between 6 and 7 a.m. the last 4 months. My main platform is Be Connected. Then it is LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Then TikTok, I want to reframe. I took off all my videos. I am extreme. And when I want change, I change no matter what. I told people I'm not going live anymore. They were upset. But I also have to tell you about the languages. When I decided to go for English, I had to make the decision. One of my dreams is to move to the US. And I'm preparing this. So I have to focus on, of course, I serve globally. But concerning languages, I stopped that. Then my Facebook, I have a group with 1,300 people in there, but it's not really guided. The first platform I would get rid of is Facebook. I'm not using Instagram so much. I think I have no talent of taking pictures that people would like.
On Instagram, you could publish short versions of your podcast, reels, and they have a lot of visibility. Of course, TikTok has also a lot of potential for visibility, but Instagram is the next after LinkedIn and TikTok, maybe. Okay. But like those three, it's much easier to reach new people. And I can give you a really good advice of a tool to use for that. There is a tool, opus.pro. It automatically cuts your episodes with AI.
You know, I use video AI. You heard about that?
Yeah, I've heard about it. How do you like it? Is it working well for you?
Yes, it was a recommendation. I use it. You have 75 free minutes per month upload. Of course, I can only do 3 episodes, but to highlight them, yes. And I'm happy to test your tool. I'm really techie, so I'm an internet
Ah,
nerd
nice.
and native. I'm a gamer as well. So I'm a gamer, not now, but in my early days. Not now. I'm too busy. I'm busy with my podcast. This is why I became an expert for this Be Connected platform as well, because I thought I can teach people how to use it and showing by doing the podcasts.
And there is another tool that I can really recommend you. It's called metricool.com. And what that does is you can post only once and it will publish on all platforms that you want. And it's even, there is a very generous free plan. If you don't use LinkedIn, then you can use it for free. And if you want LinkedIn and some other extras, it costs some money, but it can be worth it, especially with this kind of amount of volume you are producing. So you could also hire someone who is helping you, assisting you with all those posts. So as long as you have this vision of inspiring people, to bringing people to the next level, and I think it doesn't need to be the limit for you with being on the podcast with you. It's just the first step. So after a while, you can come up with other ideas. You could also create a course, how to get outside of your comfort zone, how to succeed, how to do things you wanted to do.
I like
And yeah. So we have the target audience. It's a pretty broad target audience. Maybe we can specify it. For creating a better understanding of target audience, there is this approach called buyer persona. Although you don't sell maybe, but yeah, everyone have some goals, something like selling. And buyer persona is to have a real person in front of your eyes, not that someone that exists necessarily, but with someone who has human attributes like hobbies, interests, routine, concerns, and goals, especially. So, for example, it could be a mother who had her dreams, but then was busy with family. And now she is back in work. And maybe she's not very 100% happy with her current job, but she's also a bit afraid of doing something else because she needs the money. And she is driving every day to the job and back and listening to a podcast. That could be a buyer persona, for example.
I love that. I'm a mother as well, mother of 2 boys, and they are now 18 and 15 years old. And of course, I have had this all like being an entrepreneur with employees. And I studied. I began to study psychology at 35. It took me 11 years because I did this with all the other stuff. So yeah, and you told me earlier and you asked me that, and I was denying this. And this was one word. It was ambitious. Is your listener ambitious? No, they are chilling. They are relaxed in their car, driving to their 9-to-5 job that they don't like. So of course, ambitious, yes, but ambitious it's in a negative way. They want like hyperachiever. Not high achiever. This is the healthy version. Hyperachiever is you cannot get enough. You are obsessed. You are a workaholic, for example. I was a workaholic and I went through a burnout without noticing, I think 3 years ago. And then I made a decision. I don't want to be in that. I don't want to have employees anymore. I was afraid going into my office every day. Wow. Every day, really. So I enjoyed doing the podcast interviews. Now, I think someone ambitious and scared at the same time, but scared in a negative way. And they want to be scared in a positive way, like excited and scared at the same time, because they are doing something new, jumping on my podcast.
Yeah, there is always this feeling in their mind. Is it the maximum what I could achieve in this life? And there is this voice in underneath, like in the subconscious mind, saying, no, I can do so much more. And the fear is keeping me from all of this success and possibilities that I'm actually capable. People have this dream, this big dream maybe, to create own business with maybe several employees and to do it full time. and to live from that. That looks so out of reach for many people because they say, okay, I have family to feed, I have my mortgage maybe. I cannot afford to do that. But if you start with a smaller step, like participating on your podcast, then you can say, okay, that's the huge step. I'm really proud on myself. And you do then something else, something a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit bigger next time. And in 2 years, you realize, oh, now I am really ready to go to this step that looked unachievable.
It doesn't have to be 1 year from now. What I did with the podcast experience was I created a newsletter, or I have a mailing list for all the guests. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I had this new intuition in July. I sent out a newsletter and it invited my guests to come on stage, speak on stage for 1 hour. So instead of 20 minutes podcast, which is pre-recorded, I invited them for 1 hour to speak. I introduced them to the audience and the stage was theirs. So they had to, I was afraid if they don't make it, then I have to. And there were episodes I had to do it interview style. Okay, this was not what I intended, but okay. Okay. And then we had 23 stage events in July. You see, I'm a hyperachiever and not satisfied what I'm delivering, but it was the next level. And then, of course, the next level, speaking on stages in person all over the world. For me as well, I take the persons with me. I offer this as an experience. We created it now. You gave me the idea. Next level.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, it's step by step. You start small and go bigger. I also did this myself. In the beginning, I thought public speaking is just not for me. It's more like for people who are really good in languages, maybe like come up with good words and sentences. And I was freezing on public speaking back then. And then when I started doing improv, I realized, wait, actually, I have to rethink my position on that, because there was a moment where we had to speak in front of the small group for 1 minute monologue. And it was for me in improv theater class. Then I did a pretty good job. I thought, oh, wait, I think I'm capable of much more than I thought I am. And after 2 years doing that, I decided, what else could I challenge myself? And I did stand-up comedy for a couple of times. It was very scary, but I was pretty happy with the result.
Wow, I love it. And I remember those TV shows offering this. So they are giving you keywords in the improv theater.
Yes.
In stand-up comedy, I like it as well. I remember in New York also there are these bars and then the audience is deciding whether they like it or not. So I love what you do and that you enlarge your comfort zone, you go into the discomfort first, and therefore you enlarge your comfort zone, and this is your new normal.
And I think what also helps, besides putting yourself out there, is psychology. So understanding how your subconscious mind is working and working on your maybe child traumas and stuff. So that's why one of my favorite topics on my podcast is with psychologists and with therapists, because I think that many entrepreneurs, and we have a crossover with your target audience, they are limited by their beliefs and by their fears. And by having therapists, usually in Germany and probably in Austria, it's a bit expensive to go to a therapist. But here I give them for free, kind of, this knowledge, which also inspires maybe some of them to go to a therapist. And that could be also for you a way you can offer on your podcast to speak with some therapists and to help them to come out of their fearness.
You mean the fear of the therapists or?
The fear of progressing, of doing what you want. Sometimes we have this understanding from our childhood that we are not good enough, that we are worse than others. And that's the biggest, like really big issue to progress. And most people like me, before I started this journey, they don't know about that. So even if they listen to your like podcast with some psychologists, maybe they will be inspired to think about it and maybe to start researching on YouTube, maybe to dive deeper into certain aspects of psychology. And maybe they will be also inspired to go to a therapist who could help to cope with those fears and that are limiting them in their success and ambitions.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a little conflict there between, so there's this market, psychotherapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. In Germany, you have a waiting time, 1 year, 2 years nowadays, and it's not so good to wait for that. Then we have the coaching field. And when you are a really good coach, you can help people with that.
Yes.
And the difference I see, and this is why I didn't become a psychotherapist, is I always said therapists are dealing with the people that are ill, let's say, mental illness. And I want to work on the prevention, that it doesn't come that far or so far.
Yes.
So I stand here for prevention, and you can do so much, the positive thinking stuff, when you focus from your goal, not on your goal, that you are already there, the feeling that you already achieved your goal. And when you practice this, and then I don't think you need a therapist. But I agree, there are shadows and childhood trauma, of course, and the persons are really specialized. When you study this in Germany, you need a bachelor degrees, master's degrees, and 5 years, 3 to 5 years. And now they turned it to become a psychotherapist. Before it was only like apprenticeship, but you practice it. And then after 3 to 5 years, you have your approbation. And I have to tell you about it because I'm trained on that. I studied psychology, and I'm not a psychologist because I only have the bachelor's degree. But that was enough for me to see what I don't want to do. Really, yes.
There are different specializations. I work with hypnotherapy, for example, with a hypnotherapist in Berlin, for example, and he is pretty affordable, lucky for me. It's more for me like a self-development. And the reason why it's so difficult to get a therapist in Germany, because only a certain percentage will be accepted by the insurance and will be for free. But all the others, and if you go outside of Germany, especially like Bulgaria, for example, you can have a really decent hypnotherapist or coach are also amazing. They are very specialized in certain things and they can do progress with you so much. And so there is this website called complicated.live. And you have all the range for everything that you want. You can have a specialist for that, a therapist. And so that's just some ideas that could help your audience. And now we see when we have a clear vision of our target audience, then so many ideas come up, like the course and the focus on certain other aspects. And your podcast is becoming even more adjusted, more effective for this particular target audience.
Yes, absolutely. And I love what you said about, focusing, sharpening it and finding new ways as well. So I would say I invent every day, I invent something new about the podcast because I like playing with it and making the changes and seeing what works and letting go of what doesn't work. So hypnotherapist, you talked about that. I had several guests doing this, and I like that you don't have to do the work by yourself. And also when they do this with you, you are relaxed and you hear those messages and it's directly, let's say, planted into your subconscious mind and you get reprogrammed in a very easy and fast way. So I highly recommend. And as you said, it starts with the first step, with the decision, and you can do this today.
Absolutely. And it's just the awareness that you even need that. That's the biggest problem why people, I think, don't go to therapists or coaches, because they have a wrong expectations and a wrong understanding. They think, okay, I have to be really crazy to go to a therapist. Or those life coaches, they think, what should they tell me what I don't know about my business, about how I succeed? But I was really surprised how effective it can be. It's sometimes even to have someone to talk with could be a huge difference. And also they have those tools. For example, we were doing a meditation where we were imagining how my life will look like in 3 years and 5 years and 10 years. And I realized I had so many options in my business, what to do next. I could write books, I could create courses and so on. And I realized I actually don't want to spend my time writing book and correcting and reading the book. I felt like in 2 years, I'm so a bit lonely sitting in my room. And for my vision was so clear with startup world and have a whole team and we have like different projects. And suddenly I didn't have 8 directions or 8 choices. I only had one main direction and 2 side projects. And my mission, my strategy was so clear.
Yes, I love what you said. So first of all, a mentor saves you time because you don't have to make the same mistakes they did. Then the aspect that you have someone to talk to, someone who understands and supports you, and someone who sees the person you want to become. You are not, it is inside you, and talk to. And this is what I criticize with the therapist. It is this therapy of talking. And you talk about your problems. So can you solve your problems when you focus on your problems? I don't think so. You have to focus on the solution, of course. And what is the solution? You mentioned it so beautifully. It is imagine the person 2 years, 3 years from now, the person you fall in love with. It's your new self. And the best thing is after you imagined it, I imagine you imagined it with closed eyes. The next step is to see that person with eyes open. And this is the mastery when you walk through life and acting exactly like the person would do, the person that you're about to become.
Yeah, one other practice is just to write down what I wish, but in a version that you are already that. It's such a small thing you can do, and it can have such a big difference.
Yeah, I can tell you what it is. It is Neville Goddard, and the exercise is named I Remember When. Mm-hmm. So I can write down, I remember when I recorded the podcast with Wilhelm. and it is 2 years from now, and I remember when we did this today. You just shift the time, and time doesn't exist. It's a construct we agreed upon. It's always now. So the person you are about to become, it's already here. It's inside you. You just have to make the decision to let go of anything else. And you mentioned something else. When you found your purpose, then decision making is really easy.
Yes.
Because you just ask yourself, is it serving my goal? Yes, you do it. Then if it's not, then goodbye.
That's so well said. I also realized in the beginning when I started this journaling with those, I am rich, I am successful, something like that with maybe concrete. I realized in the beginning I was focusing more on financial aspects, because when you are struggling maybe with your startup or with your family, like with finances, everything is all about money sometimes, and it hides all the other goals in your life. And after a while, I realized, okay, now I stopped writing about finances, especially in the beginning. And now it's actually lost on importance. And more other things like health, for example. We strive for gaining financial freedom, and then we risk our health sometimes with burnout. But if you work on your mental health, on those journaling, you suddenly realize that's not the only thing you have to take care of. And yeah, we went a little bit off marketing, but yeah, it's can be very helpful, and it's like inspiring. For me, what I do with our podcast, I have a business partner, is giving free consultancy that would cost actually a lot of money. And entrepreneurs, I know it from myself. I used to be one many years ago, and the budget is so limited. You cannot afford to hire all those kind of coaches because they are like a couple $100 per session. So I give them all this value for free, just to get some basic information, of course, like certain information and inspiration. And then, of course, if they see, oh, I didn't know about hypnotherapy, but I want to do it, then they can do it and they can make a decision.
Oh, I love what you said about sharing the wisdom and knowledge, of course. And it's also about, that we get to know each other and also introducing to other people. So about the connection as well. And of course, I like to learn more about marketing, because when I started studying economics, and I started it because I wanted to dive deeper into finances and accounting, I was really bad in mathematics in school. And also there I demonstrated the world that I can study things like business economics, and accounting is not an art, but finances and all the formulas, and also psychology with the statistics. It was really difficult for me. So I neglected is the word, I think, the marketing aspect, because it was too boring for me. And now, but I think this was true 20 years ago when I studied, because we had no social media. I'm a Facebook user since 2007, and Twitter as well. Of course, I had to jump on every platform, and now I forgot about. So it is true when I said it was boring at the time. I don't know if you remember the websites we had, the static. It was just I don't know, like a business card. There was no moving, no flashes. This stuff or images or videos, they were not there. This is why I said Instagram is not inspiring me. It is pictures. Maybe it reminds me of the web 1.0.
Yes.
And maybe we solved a blockage here, because what was the other thing? Nowadays with TikTok and the videos, it is more, maybe I would not say challenging, because I think you cannot use your knowledge from 20 years ago to grow your brand on TikTok, because it started 2016 with Musically. And I know my kids laughed at me, but they brought me there. They said, you have to create an account. And I was shocked. I tell you, when I joined TikTok, everyone, it was during COVID, everyone was eating, putting up their makeup, or doing the hairs. And what I said is, you do this before you go live. So I was like you prepare yourself and then you turn on the camera. But you have to imagine, I was so afraid. I was 5:30 in the morning. I read from a book. I read from Think and Grow Rich on TikTok, that no one sees me, just to practice. It was 3 years ago, to practice to show up in front of the camera. So your question was about marketing. And I think it's more interesting now with the social media and the possibilities, because I didn't told you, but in 2007, even if I would have loved to do my podcast, I didn't have the possibilities like I have now. Podcast is for Spotify. You upload your first episode and it's done. It's easy.
Yeah, I think marketing also has a bad reputation, but what is marketing? And you can divide it in two fractions. And for me, marketing is, there is a good product and it finds the right people who want this product. And this product can be a podcast, for example. And then you adjust your product according to those people so that it improves. It's like the worm has to taste to the fish, not to the fisher. To a certain degree, but you can also find a target audience that is a little bit similar to yourself. So it can be. The next step is the technicalities of social media, of marketing. And that, for example, you enjoy sharing the knowledge of other experts, and you can create those short videos, and then you share them on all those social media platforms. And you don't care, okay, you have this priority. You say, okay, TikTok is my number one, and maybe Instagram is my fourth or third, and Facebook is fifth, for example. But the thing is, you are helping people to find you. And in the beginning, you don't need to adjust your content to each platform individually, because you are not a huge company who can afford it and should afford it. Instead, you have your favorite platforms, and it doesn't cost you much to share the same content on other platforms, especially like Reels, like those shorts videos below 1 minute. All the platforms want them.
Yes, I remember YouTube Shorts. So first there was TikTok, and then YouTube was doing the same. And then they changed their algorithm. And But I like the idea, and this is new for me, to use the same content for all of the platforms.
Yes, you just share the same post with metricool.com. It's so easy. You can schedule like for the whole week, for the whole month, so that every second day, every day, some posts will be posted on all those platforms. There are a little bit of the differences in terms of how many characters you can write, but most of the time people will focus on the video itself, so it doesn't matter actually.
Wow, I love it. And I have so many content because I focused on doing the interviews and I neglected especially the work before the podcast episode. So I jump into the podcast with my guests and I just read their bio to introduce them. And then I ask the questions because I want to find out during the interview. And now I realize what I can do with all of my content. So I created a LinkedIn newsletter, for example, where I write about every episode as an article, they call it article, like interview from the interviewer's perspective. And my goal is I want to publish in magazines. This is my next step because I think I can use the content from the podcast episodes to sell articles.
Yes, that's a good idea. You can grow from there. I also realized recently, I said to myself, okay, actually I have so many podcast episodes now. I have until October, and then I have so many guests. So in this area, I'm satisfied. I don't need to push that. But I'm sitting on gold in terms of content. And now I'm really focusing on creating shorter videos so that it's consumable, because podcast is not for everyone. And podcast is like a huge investment for people. Okay, in your case, it's a bit shorter, so it's a bit smaller investment, but still it's people who constantly listen on podcasts, but it's not the majority of population. And videos, they are so findable, like on shorts and normal videos, they are much easier to find by the right target audience and by those people who are not connected yet with you. And they are so easy to consume. There is one question in one video that is being answered. And maybe people are not interested or don't have the time to have the whole episode about, like, in the beginning, it's starting slow a little bit, and then there are some highlights. But they watch a small, short video answering particular question. And then they are surprised. Oh, there is a amazing podcast out there. I have been watching like several videos from that. I want to watch the whole episode.
Wow, I understand. I had to write it down now. So what you are doing in the short videos is you have one question and the answer. So you solve a problem for the audience, for the target group, and they will be forever grateful and watch the full episode, or they reach out immediately to book me as their new coach.
Yes, exactly. You can, in the end, you can also add like your logo and contact me to be a guest on an episode or something like so. A call to action, so very short, and you can have a reach of 10,000 of people for free, almost for free. Of course, there is work involved. And one other advice: it's not for everyone, but working with freelancers can help you so much, because to do certain things, it's boring for me to do those routine jobs. For example, to cut out the best phases. I'm trying to find the right people for that. I hired a few people and now I'm choosing the one who is doing the best job. And they are not expensive because it's not that difficult. You don't even need editing skills, and you cannot focus on everything in the same time. You had your employees, so for you it's nothing new. But for many people it's like, oh, freelancer, there are some like reasons against that, but it's certain things they cannot do for you. But everything else, especially the things you don't want to do, you can do it pretty affordably.
Oh, yes, I love what you said. And there's a difference between having employees and hiring freelancers. You get rid of them more easily. Of course, employees have a contract. Yes, it was a great experience. And you also have responsibility and you have to lead them. And otherwise they will left you. And freelancers, you have fixed like what they have to do. It is fixed and they know exactly. And sometimes when you lead people, it is not clear or they are doing what they want to do. So it can be challenging. And this was the reason I quit and I left them alone, and it went all down. All no, it was clear, but I couldn't do it anymore. So I went to travel, and it was so amazing, this experience.
Which kind of business did you do back then?
Back then, it was an accounting company. We did accounting for, and I said it was boring as well. It was not what I wanted to do. And when I came across Bob Proctor in 2021, and he asked just one question, what do you really want? It was the question you asked earlier. Then I wrote it down, and it was not what I wanted to do anymore. It was something I felt it's easy for me, accounting. And I thought, but at the same time, I thought there's nothing else I can do as a talent or a gift. But I realized, no, it's not that. I don't want to do this. So I quit. I left it. Somehow it dissolved by itself last year. It is. So once you make a decision, it's really quick. So within 4 weeks, it was all solved or dissolved or.
Yeah, that could also be one of your other target audiences who are successful actually and earn good money. Maybe they are in consultancy, maybe they have a company, but still something inside them are telling them that it's not it. There is more for them. But for them, it's more difficult to switch because they are earning so much money, maybe like they are successful. They have a very high, not only level of living, but also other people are, their mothers, their parents are so, wow, you are so successful. And then to do the step, to go to start a startup or to do some creative work where you suddenly earn a tenth of that, it's very difficult. But as you saw yourself, just one single message changed your life. It's like a domino effect. And the same you can do with your audience.
Yes, and I would say the message would be for people that are in the business still and they want to change something. I would say you don't have to drop it all within 4 weeks like I did. But the message came to me earlier. It was, should I hire someone to replace me as a CEO, for example? And I didn't do that. So I hold on to the, let's say, the operational work, the everyday work. So I showed up in my office when I was not traveling, and it was not doing good for me. So I would always say, hire more people. When you think you cannot, when you feel overwhelmed, hire more people. And then you take a time out and relax. And then you come back refreshed with new ideas. Don't need to be present in your company anymore.
Yeah, I think when you are in this stress all the time, you don't even have the time to think about your life goals. Are you meeting them? Is it going in the right direction? What you wanted actually? You are just handling issues and handling work. But when you give you some time and maybe do some journaling, writing down and think, just the thinking part, just if you don't have any distraction, you just lie somewhere and relax, that can make a huge difference for your mind, for your goals, for your perception.
Yes, absolutely. So I went on a cruise for 5 weeks to relax, and I wrote a book. It was the contribution, it was a book chapter for Circle of the One. But the thing is, what I jumped into was a book writing in English language. Mm-hmm. So again, I jumped into the unknown, and I thought, now I have time to do something creative work, something different than before. And it was great. So I would like to encourage you, whatever you are up to today, examine, assess, are you happy now? If you are not, do the opposite. Do what makes you happy until you are happy again.
Yes, exactly. So I didn't give you step-by-step instruction how you should implement your marketing because it's very individual and it needs like several weeks to create this kind of strategy and this kind of process. But my goal, I think, was more like to have a bit more clarity in which direction to go and which kind of people to target, and to give you some advice in terms of how you can use social media, how you can promote your podcast. Because with podcast platforms, they are not very well for finding new audience. It goes a little bit slow, but platforms like Instagram and YouTube and LinkedIn, they are much better for finding completely new people who are not following you.
Yes, I think so. And I thank you very much. What I take away is you mentioned two tools with AIs. Yes, I appreciate that very much. Also, you gave me the idea of producing reels or shorts on Instagram and YouTube with the question and an answer and a call to action. Wow.
Yes.
And I will do this because, yeah, as you said, we grow little by little, and I cannot implement all at once. Takes little time. And also the time to where the learning is when you do something differently, you change something, and then you watch the results, and then you evaluate. Was it a good action? No, was it
Yes,
was it
exactly.
a good decision? And then you continue what's working good, and you let go of the other options.
Yes, exactly. And that's how I usually do it with my clients. We have one-on-one sessions where we decide on the next steps. And then sometime later, we have a call again and see how did it progress and which next steps are needed. And if you like, we can also have in a few months, we can have another call and see how did it go and which next steps you can do.
Oh, I would love that. And I absolutely would love to invite you to be a guest in my podcast, in the Inspired podcast.
Yeah, with pleasure, definitely. I would love that too. Thank you so much, Caroline. It was a wild ride. We covered so many interesting topics.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure. I learned so much, as I said, and I will be forever grateful. Let's do this.
I like to hear that. Thank you very much.